Okay, hello and welcome guys. This is my video on gross future loss random variable, which is one of the most tricky topics of subject CT5, and I've received a lot of queries from students that they are not able to understand this particular topic. So I've decided to make a video on it, and here we'll be only discussing this particular topic, that is gross future loss random variable, and we'll be doing a few questions on it. Okay, so let's try to understand what does gross future loss random variable mean. Okay, so for example, you issue a particular contract. Okay, if you issue a particular contract, uh, there would be a certain benefits and expenses under the contract. Okay, which you will be paying throughout the life of the contract, right? So you'll have benefits at different points of time whenever, let's say it's a whole life assurance contract, so you'll be paying all the benefits in the future, right? And you will have a lot of premiums which would be received here, right, at different points of time. And you will actually incur a loss if your benefits and expenses are greater than your premiums. Simply speaking, your outgoes are greater than your inflows, then you'll have a loss, right? So that is the entire idea about how an insurance company functions. You'll be paying various benefits and expenses, and you'll be receiving premiums. Premiums are your inflows and benefits and expenses are your outflows. Okay, now what do I mean by gross future loss random variable? At any arbitrary time t here, okay, at any arbitrary time t, what they'll ask you is the present value of loss at this particular point of time is referred to as the gross future loss random variable at this particular time t. So what would this include? This would actually include the present value of all the future benefits, and you'll add to it the present value of all the future expenses, and out of it you will reduce the present value of all the future premiums, right? So this is basically this idea that at time t I'll be looking in the future, right? I won't take anything from the past, so the past thing is gone. Okay, it's not there. You're just looking in the future and you're seeing all the benefits that come to you, okay, and all the expenses, right, all the outflows, and you deduct from it the premium and the present value of all the premiums, and that is how you calculate the amount of future loss. Because if your benefits and premiums are more than benefits and expenses are more than your premium, that is when you'll incur a loss. And here I'm considering the present values. Okay, I'm considering the present values of these things. So it would be in terms of kx and tx. Okay, so if it involves discrete points of time, that is maybe payments occurring at the end of the year of death, or any sort of annuities in advance or arrears, we'll be using kx for that. Okay, and we'll be defining the present value random variables for these particular benefits, expenses and premiums. And if it involves payments which are happening immediately, okay, assurance functions which are immediate, okay, immediately on death, or you have got annuities which are continuous, obviously you'll be defining the present value random variable in terms of tx. So one thing you should note is that these are not your EPVs but your present value random variables. So that is what you're taking here. You're taking the PVRVs and not the EPVs. Okay, and that's how you actually write down the gross future loss random variable, and this usually comes for 5 marks in the exam as a part of a long question. So for 3 to 5 marks it usually comes in the exam. Okay, so I'm going to detail on how you do it the most simple thing that you have to remember here is that it is the PVRV of benefits plus expenses minus your premium. So your outgoes minus your inflows, and you have to define these PVs in form of random variables, because your PVs are always random variables, because you do not know what would be the amount of benefits that you will be paying or the expenses you will be paying, and what would be the amount of the premiums that you will be receiving, right? You cannot know it for sure because it depends upon death of a particular person. So you're taking the random variables of the present values, okay, and then you're arranging them in this order in order to write the gross future loss random variable, and you do not take the EPVs in this case. So you won't be using notations like ADUX, AX, capital AX, all these won't be used because these are not EPVs, these are PVRVs, all of them. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so this is the first question that we are taking, and this is question number 12 from September 2006 exam. And here we'll not be doing anything else apart from the representation of gross future loss random variable. So let's do that. Okay, so an insurance a life insurance company issues a 10-year decreasing term assurance to a man aged 50 exact. Okay, so there's a man aged 50 exact, and the company is issuing 10-year decreasing term assurance. Okay, so the death benefit is 1 lakh in the first year, second year 90,000, so on and so forth. It decreases by 10,000 each year, and finally in the last year it is 10,000. Okay, right? So in the 10th year it is 10,000. The death benefit is payable at the end of the year of death. Okay, something that they've given us. Level premiums are paid annually in advance for the term of the policy ceasing on earlier death. So yeah, premiums are payable in form of a temporary annuity. Okay, interest is 6% per annum. AM92 select is the mortality. Initial expenses are 225% of the total annual premium. Okay, renewal expenses are 2% of each premium from the start of the second year, and inflating at the rate, and there is an expense of 50 per annum, inflating at the rate of 1.923% per annum at the start of the second and the subsequent year. So they've given this increasing rate for these expenses, right? So you must remember that 6% and 1.923% cancel out. So if I is equal to this and B is equal to this, then J, the adjusted interest rate, comes out to be 4%. Okay, so that's something you must remember. And then you have got for renewal the and claim expenses, the amounts are quoted at the outset, and increase due to inflation starts immediately. So this clearly means that the increase starts immediately, that is, it starts at time 0 itself, right? So increase starts at time 0 itself. Okay, so the first year's expense would be equal to you've got 50 and multiplied by 1.01923, right? uh yeah, this is the renewal expense at the beginning of the second year, I presume. Yeah, so the second year's expense would be equal to this, because it was 50 here but there was no expense here. It was quoted as 50 here at time 0, and then by the end of the first year this amount of inflation has applied to it. So simply you can think about it that this increase, it is added at the beginning of each year and not at the end of each year, right? So it starts at time 0 itself and goes on and so forth, right? Okay, right. So that's how you can think about it. So this expense at the beginning of the second year, that is at time 1, this would be equal to 50 into 1.01923. Okay, and then there is a claim expense of 200 as well. So if someone dies in the first year, at the end of the first year, the expense would be 200 into 1.01923. Okay, again this has to be understood. All right, so they're asking us to calculate the amount of annual premium, which we won't be doing it. here. You can calculate the premium for yourself. I'll just write the final answer for you. So your annual premium should come out to be 281.61 pounds. Please verify it. Here what I'll be doing instead is writing the expression for the gross future loss random variable, which is the second part of the question. So write down an expression for the gross future loss random variable at the end of the ninth year using whatever elements of basis in 1 that are relevant. So that is the question. So this contract, it is there, okay, and you have to write the gross future loss random variable at the end of the ninth year. So that is at time 9, right? Because the first year's end is time 1, so the ninth year's end would be time 9, right? And at this point of time you'll be taking the present value of future the present value random variable of the future benefits, and from it you'll be deducting the present value random variable, adding to it the present value random variable for the expenses, and deducting from it the present value random variable of the premiums. Okay, so that's how actually you do it. Okay, so let's see what will be equal to, what will it be equal to. Okay, so when I think about the ninth year, when I go on and think about the ninth year, I'll have to take into account my benefits, expenses, and premiums. Okay, now in the ninth year, two things can happen. Either by the end of this year, this person dies, he can die, or he may not die. Okay, so there are two possibilities, that if he dies or if he doesn't die. That is why it is a random variable. It can take two values. Okay, but if you think about it, the expenses and the premiums are almost certain. These two things are certain because these are not random variables. Because whether the person dies or he survives, he will have to pay the expenses at the beginning of the ninth year, and he'll also have to pay the premium at the beginning of the ninth year. But the claim expenses will only be paid if he dies. Okay, so basically you can actually divide this random variable into two parts. The two parts would be if he dies or if he doesn't die. If he dies, then your K, what was his age? His age at the beginning was 50 years. Okay, so at the end of the ninth year, his age would be 59. So there can be two cases. Either he dies or he doesn't die. If he doesn't die, then K59 would not be equal to 0, right? K59 means his curtailed lifetime at the age of 59. This will not be equal to 0, right? This will actually be equal to more than 0, anything more than 0, right? And if he dies, then definitely his curtailed lifetime would be equal to 0, right? So I've divided it into two cases. I've divided this thing into two cases, that if he dies in this year or if he doesn't die. So this is the case for he doesn't die, and this is the case for he dies in this year, right? As simple as that. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to write the random variable for the future loss, and it would be different in both the cases. Okay, now let's think about the case if he doesn't die. Okay, so if he doesn't die, he pays an expense at time 9. The expense amount would be 50, but it would have increased for 9 years. Okay, it would have increased for 9 years, so this amount would be equal to 1.01923, right? It is payable at the beginning of the 9th year, and it would have increased for 9 years, so 1.01923 to the power of 9 increases have happened. Okay, so that would be your amount of expense, okay, which is payable. That is the expense at the beginning of this year. This is its value. It does not need to be discounted. This is its present value, right? I'm writing the present value of this expense. Okay, so it is a certain amount. There would be no random, it would not depend upon the value of what value does K59 take, right? Because this is a certain value, so this amount remains certain, and it comes in both the places. Okay, I'll be writing it eventually, so you'll get that. Okay, so basically what is happening here is this is the present value of the expenses. What is the expression for my present value, my net gross future loss random variable? My gross future loss random variable is basically equal to PVRV of benefits plus expenses minus premiums. Now if he does not die, then the PVRV of the benefits is equal to 0, so that would not come. The PVRV of expenses is the present value of all the future expenses, and there is only one expense payable now at time 9, right? There's no other expense, only one expense at time 9, so its present value is this. Okay, so if you see the diagram, there's only one expense here of 50 into 1.01923 to the power of 9. Okay, now I have to deduct the present value of the premium. Now if he dies or he doesn't die, doesn't matter, he'll have to pay the premium, right? Makes sense? Okay, so the value for the premium, the present value for the premium is 281.61. It is given, that is the amount of annual premium that you receive. Whether he dies or he doesn't die, it does not matter, and it would be payable at time 9, so it does not need to be discounted, right? So basically the value for the premium is equal to this. Okay, so this is my expression for the gross future loss random variable, my expression for loss if he does not die. But if he dies, then what happens? See, your value for the expenses and the premiums remains the same, right? Oh, okay, there was actually a renewal expense as well, that was 2% of each premium. There was one more renewal expense that was 2% of each premium. So you need to deduct that, you need to add that renewal expense here as well. There were two renewal expenses, there was this one and there was the other one, which was 2% of this expense, so that would be equal to plus 0.02 into 281.61, right? So these three things would definitely come here if he doesn't die. Now what happens if he dies? If he dies, these expenses and the premium would remain the same, obviously, because they are certain payments at time 9, they do not need to be discounted as well. But there would also be a PV of the benefit. Now benefit is payable at time 10 only if he dies. So this is the case if he dies, right? Then K59 is equal to 0, right? Because if he dies in this entire year, his age here would be 59, and then his curtailed lifetime at age 59 would become 0, right? Because whatever his age may be at death would be 59 point something, so the integer part would be equal to 0, right? So okay, so now if he dies, this is the case, then what happens? Additionally, there is a death benefit. Okay, so the amount of death benefit is actually equal to, if you see, it is equal to 10,000. In the last year they have told us that the death benefit, it started off at 1 lakh and then it kept on reducing. In the last year it is 10,000. And the amount of claim expense, okay, there is one more thing, this is death benefit, this is sure, this would happen if he dies, and there will be a claim expense additionally, and the value of the claim expense is actually equal to, if you see, it is equal to 200, but it would have inflated for 10 years now. Till this time the inflation would have affected for 10 years, so this would be multiplied by 1.01923 to the power of 9. So these two additional things will come here, right? So these are two more things that will come, but they will be will need to discount them till time 9, so they'll be discounted as well. Okay, so this is the case if this person dies. Now let's take this value, so it becomes PVRV of the future benefits. Okay, so what is the future benefit? It is equal to 10,000, and you need to discount it with the factor of 1.06, because that is the amount of interest. Okay, then there are expenses. Okay, expense, these two expenses are as it is. Okay, 15 to 1.01923 to the power of 9, and this one as 0.02, into 281.61, right? These are as it is. Apart from that, there is one more expense. This expense is of, okay, this is the same case here. This expense is of 200. Okay, it would have increased by this time because this is our time 10 now. This would have increased by for 10 years, and this needs to be discounted for 1 year as well because it is payable at time 10, right? And apart from that, there is the premium, so you need to deduct 281.61, right? So this is your entire expression for this gross future loss random variable. And if I try to write it simply, these all figures, if you adjust them, it comes out to be minus 216.63. If k okay, no, the above one comes out to be actually, yeah, it comes out to minus 216.63. So you have a profit, okay, if he does not die. K59 is not equal to 0, and if K59 is equal to 0, then your loss at this time comes out to be this comes out to be 9445.60, right? So this is your gross future loss random variable, and it has two cases, and this is how you have to write the gross future loss random variable very simply. So we will now move on to the next question. Okay, so the next question that we are taking is question number 13 from September 2007, and it goes as follows. So a life insurance company issues a 35-year endowment assurance contract to a life age 30 exact. So the initial age is 30, okay, and this is time 0, right? And the sum assured is 200,000 and is payable at maturity or at the end of the year of earlier death. So if he dies before the term of the contract, that is before the age of 65 or before time 35, then he gets the death benefit or at the end of the year of death. If he survives till here, there is a maturity benefit of 200,000. Okay. Alright, level premiums are payable annually in advance for the duration of the contract, so it is payable in form of a temporary annuity, of course. And then you have got the first question that show that the annual premium is approximately 2007 using the following basis. Okay, so 2007 is the amount of premium you have to show using this basis. This I'm not doing, this you have to do by yourself. Your interest rate is 6%, AM92 mortality, initial expense is 300 plus initial annual expenses of 0.5p. Subsequent expenses are 2% of second and subsequent premiums, and there is a claim expense of 600 on death and 200 on maturity. So these things are there, and you have to calculate the premium. Let's move to the second part that we are concerned with. Write down the gross premium loss, gross premium future loss random variable. Okay, this is gross future loss random variable that they want us to calculate after 25 years. So this would be at time 25, that is at age 55. Okay, right, and using the same immediately before the premium then is due. So this is always our assumption that at this particular time we are calculating the gross future loss random variable, or when we do reserve, this is always our assumption that the claim that pertains to the previous year would be paid at this time. Okay, and the premium that pertains to the next year, since it is receivable in advance, the premium will also be received at this same time only. Okay, right, but since this premium is from the next year, we assume that this premium has not been received yet. Okay, so the next year's premium is not received, but the last year's claim is paid. This assumption is not that relevant. You need not pay a lot of attention to it, but this is always our assumption. Okay, so now we need to give an expression for the gross future loss random variable. So gross future loss random variable is nothing but the PV of the future benefits plus the future expenses minus the future premiums, right? So you're standing at this time, and you'll only be looking in the future. When you see in the future, you'll see two things: either this person can die during this duration, or he can survive till here. If he dies during this time, he gets the death benefit at the end of the year of death, and if he survives, he gets the maturity benefit at the end of the term. Okay, So let's we'll have to take two cases because the benefits vary and the expense varies. That is the most important thing, that the claim expense varies. So let's take two cases and define our gross future loss random variable. Okay, so the gross future loss random variable will be given by this expression. I've already written it. It would have two cases: k55 is less than equal to 10 or k55 is greater than 10, right? So either this person dies during this duration, in that case k55, that is his current age is 55, right, and we are calculating it at this time looking in the future, so k55 would be less than equal to 10, or if he survives then k55 would be greater than 10. That's quite obvious, right? Okay, so your gross future loss random variable becomes 200. Now it is actually EPV of benefits plus expenses minus premium. So you take the EPV of benefits, so it would be 200,000 into v to the power of kx plus 1. That is always our expression for the present value of benefits which are payable at the end of the year of death. So whatever his current lifetime turns out to be, okay, we'll just add 1 to it. So if he dies at the age of, let's say, 57.5, okay, that's the death age. So your current lifetime k55 would turn out to be 2, and his benefit would be paid at time 3. So k55 plus 1 would be equal to 3, and that's correct. Actually the benefit would be paid then, and then it is discounted for 3 years, so v to the power of 3 will come here. So k55 plus 1 plus 200 into v to the power of k55 plus 1, again because this is the amount of claim expense, right? So 200 into, that is also discounted for 3 years in that case. Okay, so k55 plus 1 is your expression, because v to the power of k55 plus 1. Okay, now I need to deduct the premium. The premium is 2007, but then I have to add the expense for the renewal expense as well. So I'm just deducting 2% here itself, so taking 0.98, and this would be multiplied with a factor of a due k55 plus 1, because the number of premiums would be one more than the current lifetime, as we always see. Okay, this is nothing, this is very intuitive. This is if he dies during the next 10 years, right? This is the expression for the future loss, right, if he dies during the next 10 years, because we are using here random variables such as k55, because if he dies before that time, he can die at in any year, and his the amount of discount and the amount of premiums would actually depend upon when he dies, right? The second case is if he does not die, that is k55 is greater than 10, then there would be a maturity benefit exactly at time 10, that is exactly at age 65. One thing you must notice is that here we are not taking into account any past benefits, only the future benefit is what we are taking into account, right? So the past benefit does not matter here, okay, only the future benefit, right? So uh, alright, so my benefit in this case would become only a maturity benefit of 200,000, that is discounted with V10, because exactly at time 10 this maturity benefit would be paid. In case of maturity, the amount of expense is 600, so 600 into V to the power of 10, again it is discounted in a similar way. 2007 is your premium, 0.98, because I need to reduce it to allow for the expenses, and this is multiplied with a due 10, because there would be exactly 10 premiums payable in advance, right? So that is your expression for the gross future loss random variable. Now they have given it in the book in a bit of a different manner. The way they have given in the book is a bit different, but then you don't need to pay attention to it. If you want to understand it, I think you will be able to after seeing this expression, but this expression means the same thing. There's just more to write, but this is easier to understand. So I think you should, always bifurcate. You should not use that minimum notation, because that makes things complicated. I think you should always use this sort of a notation. Okay, so the next question I'm taking is the last one for this video, and this is question number, let me see, this is question 14 of September 2008 exam. So September 08, question number 14, right? So let's try to look at this. Okay, question number 14. All right, so a life insurance company issues a decreasing term assurance policy to a life age 55 exact. The death benefit which is payable immediately on death, is 100,000 in the first policy year, and then it keeps on reducing by 10,000 every year. In the last year, 10th year, it is 10,000. Okay. The policy is paid by level annual premiums payable in advance for 10 years. Okay. So premiums are payable in advance for 10 years or ceasing on earlier death. So that would mean that it's a temporary annuity. Okay. The life office uses the following basis for calculation of premiums and reserve. This is the basis: AM92 select, 4% interest, initial expense is 300, and 25% of the first premium. Renewal expense are 5% of all premiums, except for the first one, and 50 into 1.04 to the power of t of on each policy anniversary, where t is the exact duration of the policy anniversary. So basically it's inflating by 4% compounded, and the 4% is the rate of interest as well. So this factor will cancel out with the interest, so it would become flat 50 in any case. Okay. Whenever it is paid, and 200 into 1.04 to the power of u, where u is the exact duration of policy at death measured in years with fractions counting. So again, it is claim expense, and fractions counting means that whatever is the point of death. Okay. T and u are two variables, but they are effectively the same thing. It just means that 4% interest would just cancel out because these are increasing, and the interest factor, it would be at 0% interest effectively. Okay, so let's look at the present value, the gross future loss random variable, and they're saying use p for the annual premium, since we haven't calculated the premium as of now. Okay, so this is in two cases. Let's look at the two cases. Okay, so again it would be the PV of benefits minus the PV of premium plus the PV of expenses. Okay, so let's talk about the benefit to begin with. So your benefit, if there can be two cases now, actually let's think about it a bit. So yeah, the benefit is decreasing and it's a term assurance, so you don't actually need two cases. I think we can do it. Yeah, there would be two cases. The two cases would be that if the person dies before age 65 or after 65, because if he dies, then a death benefit is payable. If he does not die, there's no death benefit payable. So you need two cases in this as well. So K 55 is less than equal to 10. This is select obviously, and K 55 select is greater than 10. These will be the two cases that you have. Okay. Okay, so these are the two possible cases here, or I can actually write this in T terms, because the benefits are payable immediately on death. So this would be T55, okay, is greater than equal to 10, and T55 is less than 10. Okay, whenever you have some term which is immediately payable in the question, then you should use T notation. If you would have used K, that would have been fine as well, so no issues. Alright, so these are the two cases. Okay, now let's talk about how we represent the gross future loss random variable. Now the benefit is decreasing, it decreases every year, right? So if this person dies, this would be less than equal to, this is just greater than. Okay, so if this person dies, then T55 would be less than equal to 10. Okay, so the amount of benefit, it would depend on the year in which it is paid, right? So actually you can represent it this way. Okay, your benefit would be equal to, it's 100,000 in the first year, 90,000 in the second year, so on and so forth, right? So I can think about this part, this as a decreasing annuity. Okay, which is actually decreasing by 10,000 every year. So the way you take it is that you have to take the initial benefit, that is S, and you have to add the change to it. So S plus B, and this is the amount you have to take for the first one, and then for the remaining you'll have to take a you'll have to deduct a decreasing assurance. Okay, so let's look at how we'll do it. Okay, you have to take S plus B, that is 110,000, and this would be multiplied with V to the power of T55, because that's payable immediately on death. And from this you can deduct, you can actually deduct 10,000. Okay, you can deduct 10,000, but this would be multiplied with the factor of K55, uh, or yeah, however many years this guy survives, that many number of this 10,000 is added. Okay, but plus 1 as well, right? So K55 plus 1, because so if he dies in the first year itself, it would be equal to K55 would be equal to 0, and this would be deducted from this figure, so it would give you 100,000. In the second year, if he dies, it would be equal to 100,000 minus 10,000, so 90,000, because K55 would be equal to 1 then, so this would be 2 times this. Okay, and this V to the this also needs to be discounted with a factor of V to the power of 55, Vt to the power of 55. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward how this works. Okay, logical, it's quite logical. It is a bit difficult to figure out at first, but then it is not illogical, right? What is happening here is, okay, so this is your value for the benefit, right? If he dies, okay, so 110,000 into V to the power of T55, and then you have got this benefit which is reducing, and this is very similar to what we do when we calculate the EPV. The EPV would be calculated as 110,000 into A 55 bar, and from that you'll have to deduct 10,000 into IA 55. Okay, this would be A5510 actually, and this would be IA5510. Okay, so that's how you do that, and this is how you do it. This is very similar to that. Now the next thing that I have is the expenses. Okay, so your expenses, initial expense are 500. Now I'm doing this at time 0. This gross future loss random variable is defined at time 0. Okay, so I'm taking everything into account. Okay, so I'm at time 0 and I'm taking all for the 10 years into account, right? Okay, so 500 is your amount of expense, and there is additionally 0.25p. Okay, so that is basically, yeah, so that is basically your amount of initial expenses. You can think of that, and let's try to fix this. Okay, let's see what was the amount of initial expense. Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, so your initial expense is this amount. Okay, and then you have got your renewal expenses. Okay, so renewal expenses are 5% of the premium, right? So you need to take 5%, so that's plus 0.05p, and this is multiplied with A due K55, since this is payable in advance. K A due K55 plus 1. Okay, A due K55 plus 1, and from it you need to deduct 1, because this is only payable from second year onwards, right? This is not payable in the first year, this is only payable from second year onwards, right? Okay, so this is your amount of renewal expense. Or what you could have done is, you could have just taken this as 0.20p. Okay, you could have taken this as 0.20p, and then you wouldn't need to deduct this. So this would have become the extra initial expense, and this would have become the renewal expense. Okay, so, that this would have become the total expense that is payable every year. This is the extra initial expense, so you can take it this way as well. Now as for the other expense, which is of 50, now this will actually increase every year and it would be discounted as well. Okay, so basically what happens here is if you are at time 2, your expense amount that is paid is actually equal to 50, and if you are at time 3, okay, again this expense is again of 50, and then at time 4 this is again of 50, so on and so forth, right? So basically uh, whenever this person dies, this expense of 50 is due. Okay, uh, right, so if this person dies with a curtailed lifetime of, let's say, um, so this is actually at time 1, this is time 2, this is time 3, so on and so forth. Okay, because if beginning of second year is time 1, right? So at 50 is payable every year, and this is actually increasing with a factor of 1.04. But if when we are calculating the PV, this would also be discounted with the factor of 1.04. So these factors, these discounting factors would cancel out with the increases, and you just have a expense of 50 every year. Okay, so if someone dies with a curtailed lifetime of, let's say, 2 years, okay, how many expenses would have been paid? Two expenses only at time 1 and time 2. Okay, and they don't need to be discounted. Okay, so I can just say if someone died with a curtailed lifetime of 2 years, that is at time 2.5, then he would have gotten 2 times 50 of expense. Then the company would have incurred 2 times 50 expense. And then if 3 years is the curtailed lifetime, then 150 would have been the expense. So basically, as many as years as this person lives curtailed, with the curtailed lifetime, the expense increases, right? So this can be conveniently multiplied with K55. Okay, whatever is the curtailed lifetime, that many number of expenses are payable. All right. Okay, because this is the renewal expense, this starts from time 1 itself and not from time 0. All right. And the premium is the last thing, so you need to deduct the premium here, that is minus P. Okay, so this is deducted, there's a minus P, and then it is multiplied with the factor for premium, so that would be A due, that would be equal to A due K55 plus 1. Okay, so this is your amount of premium, and this is the entire structure if this person dies within the next 10 years. Okay, so this is the case if T55 is less than equal to 10. This is the case if T55 is less than equal to 10. Okay, so this is the case if T55 is less than equal to 10. The other case would be if T55 is greater than 10. That is if this person does not die within the next 10 years. So the benefit would become 0. There is no benefit, right? There's no benefit, just the premium and the expenses, and they too become fixed because we know however many we know that this person did not die for 10 years, so exactly 10 premiums would be payable. So it becomes as simple as that. Okay, so what would be the value of this? Let's see. So there would be no benefit. Okay, this benefit entire value becomes 0. Your initial expense actually remains the same, so that is equal to, okay, so this expense amount, it was not of 500, it was given as 300 actually, this renewal expense or this initial expense. Okay, and you had a you had a claim expense which was equal to 300 plus the total amount of uh, plus it was increasing with 4% every year. Okay, so if that expense increased 4% every year and the interest rate was 4%, that would cancel out, so it would be equal to 300 only, and it would be paid whenever the death claim arises. So it won't be affected by the amount of the by the time of death, because it would be discounted with the same amount as well. Okay, so this becomes 300 only. Okay, uh, it becomes 200 only. 200 was the amount of expense. Okay, so it becomes 200 only, and then this is if T55 is less than equal to 10, right? And the other case is if T55 is greater than 10, then in this case there will be no benefit. No benefit then there will be no benefit. The initial expense of 300 would remain. Then there is the renewal expense. The renewal expense would now be equal to 0.05 into a due 10, right? 0.05 into a due 10, and your initial expense again becomes 0.20p. These all are same. Okay, and then from it you'll have to deduct the premium, which would be p into a due 10 again, right? And there would be no claim expense. Okay, so this is your value for the, right, this, and then there is this expense of 50 into k55 was there, so this would become 50 into 9 actually, because it is payable for 9 years from time 1 to time 10 and not at time 0, right? So this is your value for gross future loss random variable in this case, right? So this is your gross future loss random variable. Okay, and that's all for this video. Thank you.